Good evening, I'm Gracelyn Guyol, and welcome to Inspiring Local Nonprofits. My guest this evening is Jeffrey Anderson, and he's the Executive Director of Mystic Area Shelter and Hospitality, happily known as MASH. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thanks, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
After a New England career with Marriott Management Services and being Vice President of Account Services for a Baltimore ad agency, Jeff accepted a position as Executive Director of St. Edmund's Retreat and moved to Mystic in 2006. He became owner and operator of Kelly's Pace, a running store in Old Mystic Village, and by 2007 had joined the board of MASH. With 4 children in Stonington schools, Jeff still managed to obtain an MBA from Salve Regina in 2014. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And last December, he became the executive director of MASH. So when and how was MASH founded?
MASH, the idea of MASH started in 1997 and it was founded in 1996. Mm-hmm. And the incident that created it was Dr. Reverend Carpenter of the Union Baptist Church had an incident with a woman, and basically this woman slept on the steps of the Union Baptist Church for 3 nights, and at the end left a low collection envelope with a $1 bill in it and saying thank you for your services. And that's what got him started thinking, you know, there are homeless people in the Mystic area, we need to do something. What I want to draw particular attention to is in the archives we actually have 2 envelopes from the Union Baptist Church. One is dated June 15th, 1997, and it's by the same person, and she put $1 in the envelope at that time, and she gave her address, and she had address. And it was a month later, basically on July 20th, 1997, that she slept on the steps for 3 nights, put the $1 in the envelope, and that time her address was homeless. Oh. And I think that really drives home how quickly it can happen. That somebody can go from having a stable environment to no home. And that really drove home the message, I think, for Dr. Carpenter.
Mm-hmm. And what are the contributing causes? Do you know what the cause was in her case, or did he know?
I'm not sure what the cause was in her case. I don't go back that far, so I really don't know that.
Right.
But, you know, MASH, when it was developed, decided to focus on family homelessness. So we deal with
family units.
Family units, exactly, right. And there are many contributing factors that can deal with homelessness for families. In our region, we have very high rental rates, so the cost of housing is very high.
Right.
Job opportunities. So employment can be a big issue in terms of making enough money to actually afford a home or even an apartment for a family. Transportation is an issue.
Yes.
If you don't have a car, it's very hard to get around. So
and
that
if
can
your
take
car
time.
dies.
And if your car breaks, that's another issue.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of issues that can deal with family homelessness, and often it's our neighbors who are serving us in the diner, or in different service sectors, and sometimes it just takes one incident to get behind in your rent, and you think you're going to make it up, but when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it only takes 1 or 2 instances to get so far behind that you just can't get caught up.
And there's always those kinds of things in life.
There's always those things, exactly.
I remember 50 years ago when I was a single mom. It was, it was a lot of hand to mouth from time to time.
It is. And if your child gets sick, and you don't have transportation, you have to take a whole day off from work to go to the doctor and take care of it, and that can be a whole day's worth of pay that you lose.
So how has the mission of MASH changed over the years?
When MASH's mission, when it first started, was to end family homelessness one family at a time.
Okay.
And that's been our mission this whole time until recently. And when MASH started, the way that you helped somebody was you put them into shelter. Somebody had a problem, you put them into shelter, and from there you see what's going on and you move forward. And basically people would be sheltered for, when I joined the board about 10 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for a 90-day stay as a shelter stay before they got out. And what we've found over the time is that it's more efficient and effective to try to stop them at the shelter door and to use other tools to help them. Primarily
solve it right there.
Solve it right there through diversion and prevention. And by doing that, you can eliminate a whole host of problems and issues that can happen. Primarily, in a family unit, when a child experiences homelessness and is sheltered, there are lifelong consequences to that effect.
Yes.
And it can affect them emotionally and developmentally and even with their health issues. So, and also recidivism. We find that children who have been in the shelter system, even with families, end up needing those services later on too. They come back into the shelter as an adult. So if we can prevent it at the shelter door, we can save money and really save children.
Save a life.
And save a life, exactly.
Right.
So recently, our board went through a planning process and we decided to pivot ourselves and actually state more of what we're actually doing. And we're changing our mission statement to preventing family homelessness one family at a time.
So, let's talk about, do you work with other service providers?
We do. Several years ago, MASH, we looked at it and we noticed that if a family was homeless or in trouble, they would call many different providers. And we found that there was a lot of duplication of services.
Right.
So through the development of a coordinated access network, it streamlines the process, one for the person in help and also for the local providers. And so now we work with other state and local municipality agencies, human services, as well as other nonprofits. And we work together with a general intake now where if somebody is in trouble, they can call 211.
I was just going to ask if you're part of that system.
We are, exactly. So if they call 211, then that's the first step that gets them enrolled into the CAN process.
Okay.
Which then gets them an appointment the very next day with somebody at MASH or another local provider, depending on what their needs are.
That's wonderful.
But that way it speeds up dramatically.
Great. So what are the services that MASH offers?
We have a three-prong approach. And I'll do it in reverse order of how it historically has been. But, shelter. We used to be shelter only. You'd come into shelter and then see where we go from there. So we still provide shelter for those who are homeless. They have no place to go. We put them into shelter. From shelter, we try to get them exit out of shelter as quickly as possible. So we now
try to find housing.
Try to find housing. So we try to get them out now within 30 days if we can.
Wow.
And really, it's a housing-first approach, is to get them into housing and then take care of issues. And we do that through a program called Rapid Rehousing.
Oh,
where before what would happen is a family would enter shelter. While they're in shelter, they have to find a job or stay employed and then save money.
Right.
And to save money for a down payment, save money for a utility deposit, and when they have enough money, then they could go look for an apartment and move in. With rapid rehousing, we help foot some of those bills.
The initial
bills. So once we find suitable housing that they can afford and that can be a long-term viability for them, we'll help with the first month's payment, last month's payment, security deposit.
That's huge.
Utilities. That way they can move immediately into the housing.
That's great.
And then move forward with their jobs. At the same time, through that process, we also work on tenancy skills. We work on budgeting. We look at employment, childcare. Somebody looking for housing, looking for a job, it can be full-time work.
Yes.
And if you have a child, who takes care of the child? So we help with childcare as well as helping with getting them enrolled in Head Start if they're that young, but with transportation to school. So take care of those needs so the main priority can be taken care of.
There's a lot of stress when you're homeless, and I'm not sure that people have the ability to think that far ahead about all the details.
Correct. And that leads us to the next piece, which is the diversion and prevention, which is diverting them from the shelter door, basically, into sustainable housing. And we do that when they call 211 and we have the appointment the next day. The first thing our social workers do is to find out what is their real situation and who can help, and try to, sometimes just problem solving over the talking to them can help them find a clearer path. And we find that we can actually divert a lot of people out of the shelter even with no money, just some resources, guidance, exactly. Then those who do need resources, we can divert or prevent with funds, and that might be, they might be a month behind on their rent, and they have a notice to quit. So maybe, but they still have a job,
and they still have the place.
So therefore, it's a lot easier just to pay a month's rent,
right,
and to keep them where they are and move forward.
Right.
And we also then, seeing what the problems, developing what the problems are, looking at them, we'll talk to the landlord, talk to the other people, and figure out what's the best course of action and help them through
negotiate a path.
And sometimes it's helping them relocate. They might have found themselves in this area for one reason or another, and their family support system is someplace else, and you just can't get back there. So sometimes just relocation to where there's more supportive services for them.
That's wonderful. I know Rhode Island has a very successful program. I don't think it's aimed just at families for homeless, and it's called Housing First, or First Housing.
We apply the same principles. Housing first is the main
because
priority.
Only that way are people in one place and stable, so you can find them and work with them and know how to get in touch.
Correct.
So
exactly.
It makes everything a lot easier. Roughly how many people are helped each year?
This past year we had we helped 71 families, and out of that it was 225 people. In that families, and that's a breakdown of shelter, rapid rehousing, diversion, and prevention. Going back, several years ago, many years ago, that number was a lot smaller.
I'm sure.
And the reason was because we were only doing shelter, and you can only shelter so many people.
Oh, yes, okay.
And what we found now is that by doing more prevention services, we can help more people with less money, and that lowers the demand for shelter. So actually the shelter demand is lower now, and we're helping more people.
How many can you accommodate in shelter?
At this present time, we have 2 shelters, so we can handle 2 families at one time. We have 2 3-bedroom shelters.
Great.
And going back several years ago, we actually had 7 shelters.
Oh.
But we found that through the prevention services, we're helping more people with less money, and the need is for less shelters.
So it's been a positive learning curve for the organization, as well as how to help these
Correct.
people.
And it follows the best practices that are put out there by DOH and others as well. Correct.
Okay, so everybody's getting better at this.
Right. And a unique thing, a nice thing about MASH is we're actually ahead of the curve on that several years ago. And we were going into this prevention and rapid rehousing before many others, and it works out very well.
So now you're a good example of that.
Correct, exactly.
That's great. Who is eligible for assistance, and what is the geographic area that you cover?
The people who are eligible are, if they call 211, they get enrolled in the CAN. That's the main thing, and then they figure out what they need. But most, for families, it's a family who's in imminent danger of being homelessness. And what that means is that if they're 14 days from eviction, then that opens them up to a whole host of services.
Immediately.
Immediately, exactly.
Right.
If somebody is homeless, then they get the highest priority, because we don't want anybody to be on the streets or in a car, but to get immediately into shelter if need be.
Right.
Others, we have a little bit time, a little time to work with their landlords or to see what their situation is, and to help them out.
Okay.
I forgot the second part of that question.
Rehousing. So rehousing involves security deposits, a lot of upfront money. Where does that money come to MASH from?
We have several sources that our money comes from. We do use state grants, local aid from different municipalities, other nonprofits that are granting institutions. We also have raised money independently as well through appeal letters and
Right.
private donors as well. And and that whole pool of money is what we use to help others. And it can come from different ways at different times. With the, I'm sure everybody knows about the current state of the budget.
Yes, the state budget is in disarray.
Exactly. So
very short of funding.
Correct. So, that has everybody wondering,
nervous,
where things are going to go, because we've made great strides in helping people out and getting the numbers of people down. And it's so much easier up front to do something than on the back end. And so as an organization, we have to look at other ways for funding and to always be ready to pivot when need be. And that's why we do rely heavily on private donors.
Yes, it's having run a nonprofit, I understand that, and the databases. And there's a wonderful magazine that I've recently discovered, Inside Philanthropy, that has profiles of donors, and so there's a lot of. This country is very wealthy as a country, and so there is a lot of money available. The trick is for the nonprofit to have the time to find it.
Correct.
And it's it's not easy.
It's not, and it's lining up. It's letting people know what our needs are, and if they line up with somebody's passion, then it's a good fit.
Yes.
And that's what's so important about getting our story out there, and to know that people can really make a difference in other people's lives. Yes,
we know that, and I think as a country we're somehow becoming more aware and look at this with much more awareness and empathy, and knowing that we could be in that position at some point in our life and not expect it at all.
It doesn't take much, I think everybody knows times in their lives when things have been difficult, and that happens for everybody.
Right.
It's just some have the resources to get over those difficulties. Some people don't.
And lots of times it comes to having family.
Correct.
Around that help you, that can help you.
Exactly. Correct.
So. What does your organization do to help families avoid and prevent homelessness? And I think you have something called Wheels to Work?
Correct. So in our prevention program, it's working upstream. So we, when people call 211, they come to us. They're at the cliff. They're about to be homeless. And those are emergency services we need to take care of to get them housed immediately and on their way. Once we do find housing for them, then it's how do we put their lives back together again? And we look at those obstacles, and one of them we find out is transportation.
It's a big obstacle.
Really
Cars
is.
are expensive and maintenance is expensive.
It really is, and one, if your car breaks down, so are you going to fix the car so you can go to work, or are you going to pay the rent?
Yes.
Well, I think I'll fix the car so I can go to work, and I'll pay the rent later.
Right.
And of course, then
later becomes difficult.
Exactly, correct. Or the car breaks down and you just can't get it fixed. Now you have to rely on public transportation and buses, and
if there's any.
If there is any, and this isn't a great place for public transportation.
We're not in a metro area.
Exactly. So we found that if we can help with transportation issues by donating cars to families that could really use a car to help them out, we do that, and we ask our donors for used cars that they no longer need.
Right.
And then we also raise money and help with sometimes it's even cab fare. Having a source for if you do have a sick child, take a cab instead of the buses to get there quicker.
Yes.
Or to help in going to look for jobs as well. So
yes.
we find that transportation is a huge issue that needs to be helped out with. As well as that is employment retooling.
Of course.
Because a lot of people are underemployed. So how can we get them to a level that they can have sustainable housing? And we will send people to CNA school to help have a CNA position, or help them retool into something else, and to try to find other educational opportunities to help them to gain better employment.
improve their skills and
Exactly,
what they
right,
can offer
right.
and open up the market for them.
Right. Of course, the big issue out there is affordable housing.
And is there affordable housing in this area?
It's hard to find. And if you think about it, I think the average two-bedroom apartment is $1,100 or $1,200 a month.
That's a lot.
And if you're making minimum wage, if you're making $10 an hour, ideally your housing cost should be 30% of what you make. And at 30% of $10 an hour, I have to look at my notes here, you're at $520 a month. So really what you can really afford is $520, yet the average price
Twice
out
that.
there is twice that.
Yeah.
And even if you made $15 an hour, you're still at $700
Well,
a
and
month.
that's pre-tax.
Correct, exactly. So that's an issue that really needs to be tackled, and that's why we have to work on that as a local and town level, but also then we deal with the individuals, find how to get their employment up so they can actually afford to live in a decent, good place.
How many paid staff does MASH have, and what does each of them do?
We have a staff of 4 right now. So we have the executive director. We have another person who helps with development and coordinating grants.
Okay.
We have a person who is an office manager and data. Data is becoming very important in terms of we have to have data-driven results.
Yes, you have to justify
You really have to.
your budget.
Exactly,
and
because you could start a new program, but if it's not really effective, it's not a good investment.
It's not going to get more funding.
Correctly. So
Right.
we really need to track who we're serving, how effective it is, and that helps us to know because an average family to shelter is about $5,000 a month. Where an average family to prevent homelessness is about $1,500 a month.
Okay.
So you can
It's a
see,
big difference.
right? But those are good numbers to have.
Yes.
And then to know if my pool of money is only so big, I can help a lot more people this way than this way.
Right.
And-
So it
and
gives you direction and
It
focus.
does. And then of course we have our social workers who do a tremendous. Marlon does a great job.
They
and
do the
really-
interviewing.
They do the interviewing, and they're dealing with the clients day to day.
Right.
And that's the person who gets in there and figures out what the issues are, where the problems are, where the benefits are, and to go with their strengths. And the whole thing is, it's self-determination. It's helping a family to know what's the best course for them, and to help them find that right path.
And I think that's really important too, to have an advocate that's helping, because when you're under a lot of stress, financial or health-wise or whatever is job-wise, or all of the above, you can't think straight.
Right.
And you can't think creatively. That part is sort of closed off because you're in such a state of anxiety all the time. And so I think it's really helpful to have someone who meets them when they first come in, knows everything about what's going on, and is their contact person, so that there's a lot of stability in that, just so that they're not being shuffled from person to person.
Exactly, correct. And that helps them an awful lot. And we stay with them for a while because, a family that is on the brink of homelessness or becomes homeless, there are multiple issues there. And you want to take care of all of them because you don't want to see them again at the shelter door.
Right.
And that's where the retooling, the training, even tenancy skills comes in to help them along the way.
When during this whole process, how many months does this go on typically?
It depends.
I mean, I know it varies, but
it
that you stay in
changes.
touch with someone.
Right, it changes. Some families only need one instance, 1 or 2 phone calls, and they're diverted without any assistance, and they're on their way. Others, you might need a month or 2. Some are 3 or 4 months.
If you're helping them find jobs, especially.
Exactly, correct,
Yeah.
right. So, and this is even, in prevention or even, after shelter, get them housed, but then they still need some stability in their lives. And it might be, it might take a while to get them to get a car for them.
Right.
It might be, rent assistance while they're being trained for another job. It might be assistance with childcare while they are being trained for a job. Then also we help, when the money is so tight and so fragile and we want to focus on those children, we also help with childcare, but also summer programs. So when school's not in session, the family has to work, what are the
Where's the
children
child?
doing?
Right.
So, we're looking more into helping with summer camps and helping with that as well.
Is that hard to find in this area, affordable childcare or programs for these children?
It is. It's out there. It's just finding. That's
good
where the
fit.
network really helps, is to find good, safe childcare.
Okay.
But you do raise a point. But that also costs money. And sometimes when a family does have two adults, it's one stays home only because the childcare costs more than they could earn.
Yes.
Exactly.
I heard that so many times, and I know it's very true. So let's summarize and figure out, we've got a couple more minutes, but let's figure out what volunteers can do to help you. We know they can donate money. They can donate a car.
Correct.
What else can they do?
Volunteers can help in many ways. Like you said, donation is important monetarily. Vehicles can help us a lot. We also take small donations of, when a family has lost everything, they need everything. So we actually have a back room that's filled with dishes and plates
Pots and pans.
silverware, pots and pans, clean, new linen, books and toys for children.
Sure.
Those items, so when we can move them into a place, we can actually move them into a place.
It's not empty.
It's not empty.
Right.
We don't have the facility to store furniture.
Okay.
But we do line up people who have furniture to donate, and when the time comes to move somebody, we can actually then use their furniture as well. And then we also use volunteers for like our gala.
Tell me about the gala.
We have this year it's May 6th, but we do a gala once a year to raise money. It's a dinner and an auction
And where is it held this year?
This year it's going to be at Latitude 41 on May 6th. It's called Home on the Range, so it's a Western theme. People can come in just jeans.
They're
and
blue
boots,
jeans and boots and
exactly,
cowboy hat.
And have a fun time.
It sounds great.
Yes.
And so this is a per person donation?
Yeah, that would be, you can purchase a ticket to attend, and you can go to our website to get more information on that.
To get more information
Exactly,
and
correct.
order the tickets.
Exactly, correct.
Okay. And if they want to volunteer for something specific, do they just...
They just call our office. Yeah, I think the number's up there on the screen. And
there it is?
There
Yes.
it is, very good. And then we can take their information and find out a time that works for all of us.
For everybody.
Correct.
Well, what MASH is doing is very needed, and I know that there are 71 families who are really thrilled with the help that you gave them last year, and I wish you good luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
And really appreciate you being here on the show.
Well, it's our pleasure. We're glad you invited us, and it's good to get the word of MASH out there.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock for another inspiring local nonprofit profile.